The only two?
We are the only two. Yes, we are. This is WeatherBrains, episode number 489, the pre-show for Monday, June 8th, 2015. And by golly, everybody has bailed on us, but Brian, we're here, pal. Me and you, we're taking this show to the top.
I guess.
So let's see. So now we've got some good excuses. Like Nate, there's a total disaster with this AMS Broadcasters Conference. Have you heard about this one?
I saw the references to it. I don't know what happened other than apparently the NWS pulled out.
Yeah, the Weather Service just decided their people can't go. So that's just bad. You know, we worked on the NWA meeting in Birmingham in 2011, and that's just bad. So,
we didn't have that problem then.
No, Nate's in this crisis mode. Apparently, Rick Smith has been out of town. And he just got back, and I understand that. And Bill Murray said he's entertaining guests. What is? What mean? You come on, man! So you're gonna do the show or not? He's entertaining guests. Oh, I'm gonna call my news director and say, I'm sorry, I can't do the 10 o'clock weather because I'm entertaining guests. Oh, brother. I've got no. Apparently, I need a social life. I mean, I think Bill entertains guests most Monday nights. Brian, are you entertaining guests this evening?
No.
See, these are the troopers right here. You got Aubrey and you got Dr. John Scala.
Yep.
Yes.
And I'm entertaining you.
Exactly. See, we are being entertained. We are being entertained by the doctor.
Well, the atmosphere was entertaining in the last couple of hours, but it's quieted down a little.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're kind of up there in the cone of action.
Yeah, it's a little quieter now. I measured a 1.25 in 1 hour.
Whoa.
Wow, that's a downpour.
We had 0.8 inches at my house in about 45 minutes.
Yeah. They were gully washers for sure.
Yeah.
I guess.
Very interesting mode of convection too. Started off as we actually had a couple of supercells that moved north of Harrisburg, so that raised some interest. Had a couple of tornado warnings on those, but then they transitioned into more of a linear arrangement, and then the rain came. Wow.
Yeah, it looked like a quagmire up there.
Yeah, radar estimated totals now last 3 hours on about 3 inches, maybe a little more in some of the heavier locations. Didn't pan out in terms of tornadoes, though. There was some wind damage and maybe 2 reports of hail.
Well,
we had a tree down right across the street from my house. I think it was due to wind, but the funny thing is when it started storming again when I got home, they're out there trying to cut the tree down to remove it, and it's still lightning outside.
Yeah.
I'm like, hello, not a smart idea.
Really? Why don't you point that saw into the air?
Yeah. No, keep going.
Actually, I did read a report of a house being struck by lightning in the Central Valley, and it started a fire.
So I'm reading the show notes here from Bill, and it says, tonight it's a treat to welcome a guest panelist that is the first time we've hosted an actual cartoon character.
Did you understand that?
No. I don't get it, and there's no name or email or ID to go with it. So I mean, I don't know what to do with it.
I'm lost.
We got cartoon characters, and wow. It's bad enough with just us on here. Oh boy, but Brian, I can tell this might be a challenge getting Brian on here. He's trying to talk to us in the chat session here. This might be a fun show.
Yeah, there he is. Okay.
Yeah, if one of y'all can just respond to him and tell him to accept the video part of this, and he can join us. And we got some strange thing going on back here in one of our studios, Brian. They're doing some town hall meeting back here in Studio D.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what that is. I mean, there's some guy back there and all these people and like a studio audience. I just wandered back there to see what it was, and there were so many people. I got scared and ran away. It's something to do with these jabronis that own the place, Sinclair. But it's
Right.
why in the world they're back there. And it's like, I guess it's just online on the internet or something. I don't know. I
don't know. I didn't get an invitation, so
I didn't either. I'm going to sit back in my closet and just ignore.
That's all right, Brian. I didn't either.
I saw Bill's show notes, but now I can't find it. Where'd it go?
Yeah, he sent an email about this cartoon character guy. I don't know.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, there it is. I got it.
So
I
does
have
this
no
mean
idea.
that Lance is not going to be with us tonight? Is that right?
Apparently not.
Okay.
I don't know. I got this note at 6:05 p. Central Time.
Okay.
It says questions in the repository on Google Drive. So.
Okay.
And we still don't see Brian. And we are coming up on 30 after, so we're about to join. By the way, if you're just watching us here, if you just stumbled across this YouTube video, this is not the actual show. This, my friends, is the pre-show. The part of the show where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we get cranky and work out technical problems. Hey, Brian, can you hear us?
I can, James. How are you? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, man. Boy, you
How
sound
you
good.
doing, buddy? How you doing?
You're looking nice and relaxed.
Yeah.
I'm at home because I worked last night with the thunderstorms and the MCS had decided to crawl through at 2 in the morning.
Was this a cat? Is that a cat back there?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
this is awesome.
He is right there. His name is Blaze.
So
He's
Aubrey
named
has
after
a
an ice cream.
Aubrey has a dog and Brian has a cat. This is awesome.
There you go.
I should go get our 2 black cats out here in the parking lot, Brian, and bring them in. You know.
Go for it.
They have never been inside, and they would totally freak if they came in here. They are very happy living out there in that little house that our chief photographer built for them.
Are they mousers?
They used to be wild, black cats, and we started feeding them, and they're just tame, and they're like old house cats out there. They just come up to you and love on you, and they have a little house with blankets in there, and they just enjoy the parking lot of the television empire here. So, and all these people feed them all day. It's like all these salespeople and everybody else, and we feed them at night. It's just in fact, they've gotten rotten where they don't like to eat the dry food. They only like to eat that stuff out of the can that smells so bad.
Exactly, and they expect you to wait on them hand and foot with a little.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Totally rotten. So we're on. Welcome to our cable television viewers, and I guess we'll start the show here. Kevin, do you know anything about this cartoon guy?
Cartoon guy.
George Global.
Georgie.
This is the first time hearing of it.
I don't have any contact information or anything. I mean, I don't know what to do.
Why do we know of him?
Well,
another guest.
Bill sent out a note saying he was going to be on the show, and I don't have any contact information. So
I think Bill was really entertaining, and this is a figment of his imagination.
Yeah. I think Bill's been in the liquor cabinet.
Yeah.
So there's Bear.
Yep. I know we have these 3-hour pre-pro meetings every week, and when you miss it, you just can't keep up. So.
Yeah, exactly. I missed it myself. Man, Aubrey, your mic sounds so good.
Does it? Good.
It just sounds so good. I mean,
I'm still working on getting this. I'm finishing up this bedroom. You can see I've finished painting the walls, and I have this dresser behind me. I dated it back to at least between 1860 and 1880 that I finally finished. So I'm working on the room and trying to figure out placement and audio.
I didn't know you were that old.
Yeah.
I was going to say that was the year that Brian started working for the National Weather Service.
Yeah.
That was the Signal Corps.
It was a good year. It was a productive year.
Tap that microphone, Aubrey. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds clean, man. It's good. All right, let's get this thing started here. Here we go. And let me hit the recorder. One of these days, that's going to happen. Recorder on and recorder on. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WeatherBrains! Yes, it is, ladies and gentlemen, time to talk weather. WeatherBrains episode number 489 for the 8th of June, 2015. Those old hazy, hot summer days are just about here. Thank you for joining us. Got a few out this week. We kind of talked about that on the pre-show. We're missing a lot. In fact, Nate Johnson has a little challenging situation. Nate is heavily involved in the AMS, broadcast meeting in Raleigh, and I guess this is all. This is almost like breaking news here. Hang on here. Let's run this.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
Yes, so we got breaking news. Apparently, the National Weather Service personnel can't come to the AMS meeting. Dr. John Scala, are you in on this deal?
No, but I have experienced this twice, being in the leadership of the NWA. It happened to us in Madison, and then it happened to us the following year. And it is a terrible situation, particularly when the National Weather Service makes up a vast majority of your invited speakers.
Well, you got set it up for those who don't know what's going on.
Oh, go right ahead, James.
Well, all I know
That's
is
all we know.
Yeah, I mean, really, Nate just kind of started. Apparently, they found out today, and I think the conference starts tomorrow.
Yeah, it's Wednesday, right? So
Wednesday. So apparently, all the Weather Service people were notified. They are not. They don't have any expense money to go to the AMS conference, so they're having to cancel. So obviously that fouls up, Nate's agenda and everything.
How does this happen at the last second like this again? I mean, you start to think that there's something fishy going on. Is Mike Smith involved in this in some way?
How inflammatory of you.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that.
Mike, please call Kevin.
That's right.
1-800-KEVIN-SELLY.com. No, I remember I was at one of these things, like Dr. John. I've been to so many of these things over the years, both AMS and NWA, and it's like I think I was at one in Madison, Wisconsin, and this happened.
Right, exactly. And we found out, I think it was 2 days before, and we had to totally revamp the schedule. And the problem that we ran into was the meeting in October is the beginning of the next fiscal year. So when everyone tries to get going to that meeting, money is often not available, or it's said that it'll be available and then it's taken away. So the issue here is, I think with what Nate is dealing with, is the money was said to be available for travel, and then they said, nope, sorry guys, there is no travel money.
Wow.
And they're doing it at the last minute, which totally fouls up your agenda.
That's the suspicious part to me. I don't understand how that can happen at the last minute like that.
It's happened to us twice now in the last 3 years, and now it's happened to Nate, and I totally sympathize with him. It is a horrible circumstance.
We need an investigation.
Brian, you're a Weather Service guy. What's the story here?
The Weather Service lives and dies by the budget, but this seems kind of strange that it's such last minute because we're not at the end or beginning of the fiscal year.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't really understand unless there's been some sort of, major funding issue of some sort, but which I haven't heard about.
Wow.
So,
well,
just speculating.
We're going to put the WeatherBrains I-team on this story, the investigative team, and we'll get a full report. Kevin is our lead investigator. So.
Well, that'll go real well. I'm still waiting on Al Gore to call me back. So.
Kevin is in Wichita Falls, Texas, and you have dried out, I think.
Boy, we really have, and turned on the heat. It's going to be pretty hot here the next couple of days. But yeah, after 17 inches of rain in May, and really only about 3 weeks of May, we'd had enough is enough. Before I have to go, though, I have to say, you haven't introduced our guest yet, but our guest and I met. There's absolutely 100% no reason for him to remember this, but this was years and years and years ago, but it's still a good story. Years ago, Brian, who would have been your news director about 20 years ago, the guy that went up to Hearst Corporate?
Brian Bracco.
Yes. He and I had some conversations about some things a long time ago, and you were very kind to be somewhat supportive to me on email with a couple of questions that I had, and I always appreciated that. But then we met shortly thereafter, and the good part of the story is where we met. We met and shook hands in the men's room at the White House.
What? Oh, yes.
What? Oh, brother.
Yeah.
So explain this, please.
Yeah, really.
Well, years ago, the Al Gore and Bill Clinton invited a bunch of television weather people to Washington for a little dog and pony show. They a bunch of them went to what is it? NCAR? No, not NCAR. Somewhere.
NMC?
Where, maybe Brian went. I don't know. But anyway, Tracy and I drove up from Richmond because we were in Richmond at the time, and we drove up just for the day because there was some reception at the White House where we listened to a little speech, and you got to shake hands with the president, the vice president, have your picture taken, and so on and so forth. So there's like 150 television weather people there, and so that's where I met Brian because I recognized him in the men's room. The best story was, and I don't know if Brian remember, did you go to the thing that morning, Brian?
I flew in, so I was late to the thing in the morning, so I was at the conference where Gore started talking.
So you might remember this then, well, no, because we were supposed to go in, I think it was the East Gate, or the East entrance to the White House, and so it was a cloudy day, and Tracy and I drove up, and she took an umbrella along, and we were in the car, we parked somewhere, and she said, should I bring the umbrella? I said, we don't want to carry umbrella around the White House. So we were late, like 15 or 20 minutes getting in, and people were coming off these buses. They'd shuttled them over from NSEP or wherever it was. And so there's like 150 perfectly coiffed television weather people standing on the sidewalk outside of the White House. And it started to rain.
Yes.
And there were 3 umbrellas in the whole group.
But those blow-dried boobs scrambled, didn't they?
Well, there was nowhere to go. We just stood there. Fortunately, it wasn't hard, but we all stood there and got wet. Does that sound familiar, Brian?
It does sound familiar.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, I haven't introduced Brian now, and I have to go do some graphics, but eventually you guys will introduce him. But it's good to see you, sir.
Well, thank you, sir.
So Brian Busby is the chief meteorologist at KMBC Television.
Yes.
And you came there in 1985.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So he has been around for a few years. He's got about 87 Emmys, and if we start reading off all these Emmys, we'll be here all night. I will say this, forget all this stuff you read here. Brian has got to be one of the nicest guys in our business. I mean, I have not heard one person say a bad thing about this guy, and for our business that is very, very rare. I mean, everybody just loves Brian Busby. So Brian, welcome to the show. Thanks for the time, and you looks like you're laid back tonight.
I'm laid back. I'm at home tonight because last night we had thunderstorms that rolled through, and so I worked last night, and so since I'm going to AMS down in Raleigh, I said, I think I'll take tonight off. And usually it's difficult to do WeatherBrains, and you guys have been so gracious to try to invite me to be on the show, and I said, well, why don't I use this time to talk from home, kick back, and talk to the gang. And since you were very nice to me, James, I don't know if you remember this, and you can probably refresh my memory. Was I the chairman of the AMS board, or was I on your review board when you went for your seal?
Oh, goodness, man. I can't remember what I did yesterday. That was like, are you talking about the seal or the CBM?
Yeah, the seal.
Seal, man, that was a long time ago. Goodness. Yeah. It was probably more than 20 years ago.
Long and short of it is, I remember looking at the tape, and there's 4 categories, as you know, educational, informational, communication, and technical. And out of all the years I served on that board, and everybody's on a 3-year term, you were the only candidate that I gave perfect 4s in all 4 categories.
Wow.
You were flawless. You were flawless. And you still are, sir.
Brian was in the same liquor cabinet as Bill Murray tonight.
I was right to that. You're absolutely right.
Wow.
You're amazing, sir.
No, I got about 1 million questions, and you guys just we don't have Rick Smith. By the way, we should mention Rick in Oklahoma City has been traveling, and he's just getting back, and he's out tonight. And Nate Johnson in Raleigh is dealing with the rescheduling of the AMS broadcast meeting out there, so he's out tonight. Mm-hmm. But let's just go back, and we like to ask everybody this, Brian.
Sure.
What turned you on to weather? Was it an event?
Yes.
Were you just born with it, or what's the story?
I think with a lot of us, it has to do with fear at a young age, or some catastrophic thunderstorm, or some sort of weather event. And I'm one of those old guys. It was before the Weather Channel, you know, so we didn't have cable. And the guys I saw doing the weather had magnets, no computer graphics. Yeah. Aubrey's
The
laughing.
good old
Yeah,
days.
way back in 1969, I was growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. And I remember this was the first tornado watch I can remember in Cleveland. Now, you know, we're pretty insulated because of Lake Erie. So we don't really get all the ingredients coming together for a tornado watch. But this was on July 4th, and it was a tornado watch, and there must have been like just hellacious thunderstorms that canceled all the fireworks displays. And I remember seeing mature trees bent over, you know, at like a 30 or 40 degree angle, and the thunder, which most kids hate when they're that young. So the thunder, you don't know when it's going to happen too loud. The trees bent over in the front yard, torrential rainfall, and I said, you know, I like to know what caused this. So, bless his heart, he's no longer with us, but whenever I would go home to Cleveland, Ohio to visit my parents, one whim I decided to look up my elementary school science teacher, a gentleman by the name of Paul Hink. And I remember going into Mr. Hink, since it happened in the summer that fall, and I asked him what causes thunderstorms, so he took me down to the school library. James, going to date myself, the Dewey Decimal System.
Oh yeah. Hey,
I know the
me-
Dewey Decimal System.
There you go.
How do you know that, Aubrey?
They taught us that in school. I'm an
Okay.
Yeah,
English
the
child.
archaeology professor probably mentioned it, you know, ancient digs somewhere.
We didn't have internet when I was in school.
Well, there we go. So we went through the card catalog, and he gave me about 4 or 5 books to take home and read. And the books, obviously for elementary school level, talked about what causes thunder, and some of the analogies I still use today. I remember one is said that the average thunderstorm weighs about 400,000 tons, the same weight as 55,000 elephants. I'm like, whoa. And the graphic was so kind of cool, and lightning's only about as wide as your finger when you see the channel of electricity on the horizon. So all these things got me going. But back in the late 60s, early 70s, the only branch of meteorology I knew of was broadcasting. And I'm sure James or anybody else who's on the panel, if you do research on Cleveland, Ohio, and you go and look at the dean of Cleveland meteorologists, there's a guy by the name of Dick Goddard. Dick Goddard has been at WJW, which is the Fox station now. They used to be CBS when I was growing up, but he's been at that same station longer than I've been on the earth. He started in 1959, and he's still going strong.
Wow.
And so I wrote him.
Dick's been on this show before. He's great.
Oh, I love Dick. Dick Goddard, he's a great guy, and probably the first imitation I learned to do was Dick Goddard's voice. Well, you know, he talks about northeast Ohio and Cuyahoga County, and we have heavy snow over the eastern portion toward Ashtabula.
You do a better Dick Goddard than Dick Goddard.
I think the first 3 years of my career I was imitating Dick Goddard when I was on TV. But I wrote him a letter as an 8-year-old, and he's so gracious enough to invite me down to the TV station. And from 3rd grade up to about 12th grade, I would go down there and he would show me the barotropic, the baroclinic, and all these models. And he would try to at least tell me that, hey, there's a lot of math to this. I'm like, I just want to point and draw pictures. And he said, no. You're going to be a meteorologist. This is what you have to go through. And so anyway, back to Paul Hink. Whenever I go back to see my parents, I would go and take him out to lunch. It took a while for him to put, you know, since he's had so many students. But I kind of told him about it on the phone, and about 10 minutes into it, he finally says, yes, I do remember you. And up until the time he passed away, whenever I would go home to Cleveland, I would take him out for lunch to say thank you. Because if it weren't him seeing that this kid just totally freaked out and got just jazzed about weather after learning becoming the fear, if it weren't for him seeing that and recognizing it in a 3rd grader, I wouldn't be here today.
Wow. That's such a great story, Brian. So what was your journey through college, and how did you break into television?
Oh, wow. You know, things happen for reasons, and it was just at the right place at the right time. I had a news director who, well, let me back up, and first of all, I'll tell you, I went to St. Louis University. That's where I got the meteorology degree. And it took St. Louis U about 2 or 3 years to place a internship in a television station. And as is the case with some, a lot of meteorology majors don't necessarily like broadcasting because, you know, it's a bastardization of the degree. It's not the true science because for them, you know, we're standing in front of a green screen, we're wearing makeup, we're wearing suits, we're not really talking the legalese or the meteorological jargon. So long story short, no senior, no junior, no sophomore wanted this internship. So they asked a first semester freshman, would you do this internship we're about to lose? And so it was 3 days before my 18th birthday that I went on the air, because my news director was about ready to expand the weekend weather or weekend news from 15 minutes to a half hour, and paying me $59 a show, 2 shows a weekend. That was my start in market number 12, which was St. Louis back in the late 70s. And people say, oh my gosh, you started so high up the food chain. But you know, when you go into a bigger market, they expect a certain amount of proficiency. So when you read the call sheets about get this idiot off the air, he doesn't know what he's talking about, who is this kid? Oh, you learn to try to develop that thick skin really early on. And so I really had to rely on the other people in the newsroom to help me understand how to get better at the craft as opposed to playing on TV. But it was a journey like that, James, that it started off as an internship and turned into a part-time job. I was there from 78 to 85, and then Hearst Corporation plucked me to be part of KMBC back in 85. So to put it in perspective, I started the week right after the Royals won the World Series, and that was way back in 1985. We came close last year, but the last year we won it was 85.
Wow. So what? Goodness, I wonder how many people have stayed at the same TV station for that long in our business. I mean, weather people. You could count them on one hand if you're that many.
You're right. You're right. And so I'm very blessed to, first of all, have a job, let alone one I love. And what's ironic, I guess, is the fact that my entire professional meteorological career has been in the state of Missouri. So to know the climatology and kind of know the patterns and know, when the MCSs are rolled across nocturnally, and you get the derechos, you get the ice storms. It's kind of fun to see all 4 seasons and learn from the previous, 12 months and say, yeah, okay, this one is not going to burn me this time. Or
I think a lot of young people, Brian, they're so worried about getting to the next market, to the next market, to the next market. They just move and move, and I understand that, but you got to admit that there's some big positives in staying in the same place for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot to be said for being a big fish in a no matter what size pond you're in, because you can, first of all, pay it back. You can be a decent steward in the community, and by the same token, if you pick up the phone and want to call a business or talk to somebody at, say, a bank, if you have an idea about a business for that matter, you're probably going to get the phone call returned because you are James Spann, as opposed to James Spann, who's only been at this station for 2 years and hopscotch all across the country. So yeah, I think it's great to be established in a market and just stay there for a while, put down some roots.
So for a guy that's been in this business for a long time, I ask you the same question I ask everybody else. So here we are in 2015. Most people, at least in my market, when they get the weather during the day, they get it right here. So my question.
I'll put it away.
So tell, if you were in the Walmart and you're talking to somebody and they say, Brian, why should I stay up until 10 o'clock and watch you when I've got this thing? How would you respond to that?
Well, that thing may be good to get you in the arena. That may be decent to actually put in your zip code, and because it is still cut and dry and it is strictly the output of a model, it cannot really be massaged. And if you think we're wrong by actually fine-tuning the forecast, then that thing is going to be much more unreliable than you'd ever believe. But I think, James, part of the problem is there's such a convenience, and people are so just they want it now. They're so impatient. And I remember laughing about this like 8 to 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. I just got done doing the 10 o'clock news. Phone rings in the Weather Center. Weather, Brian. Yeah, what's the 7-day forecast? I said, well, I just gave it on TV. Well, I just got home. And I'm like, oh, okay, ma'am, then, let me talk to you. But that was the beginning of saying, people want it when they want it. And it's a tough battle. But I'm thinking that app may be okay to, once again, give you a general broad brush. But I guarantee you when it comes to thunderstorms that are producing tornadoes that are going from this location to that location, street level, that app has no value whatsoever.
And in this day of social media, instant communication, on 24/7. How do you manage your schedule? I love to ask people this because I think it's my biggest struggle in life is time management, because now with Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and Instagram, we're never off. We're constantly on. How do you do your time management?
It's not easy. I find myself getting up earlier, and I find myself going to bed later, and I find myself doing at least some of the stuff automated through Hootsuite, so at least some of the stream continues on. But the biggest problem I have, and I applaud you because when do you sleep? Are you a Martian? I mean...
I'm only 25 years old. This is what you look like when you never sleep. Your hair falls out and you get all these wrinkles. It's a total disaster. Get some rest. That's my advice.
There you go. But it is so difficult, though, to try to balance it all. And I'm still learning, because you named about 7 or 8 different platforms. I'm only on about 4. I've not done Google Plus to the extent.
Well, you've done it tonight, man. You were hanging out on Google Plus.
There you go. But yeah, Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter and gosh, it's and then again your own station website, where they want you to do 2 or 3 updates during your shift and make sure that you tweet out X amount per day, and it's like, yeah, it gets difficult. But that's the arena that we're dealing with. That's now the sign of the times, that people do want it when they want it, but they're going to go to their trusted source. Yeah. And as long as you have that name recognition and that sizzle or that sort of traction in your market, then even though they are going to see what the forecast will be down at the lake hour and a half away, but if they are curious to know what's really going on, if they do hear claps of thunder and know they're under a tornado watch, they're going to go to their trusted source, and that comes back to a human being and not just something you can swipe on a screen.
Yeah. I don't mean to hog the interview. If you guys want to jump in, but I'm trying to. These things come to my mind, and the one thing I want to be sure and ask about, Brian, it's those that have interned with you, those young people that you have,
mentored.
They've been under your watch for all these years. It seems like you, maybe more than anybody else in this industry, have done an incredible job with that. Describe why you do that and some of the people that have come up under you.
Wow. Well, why I do it is because, again, when you think about how many people do what we do across the United States, there are probably more architects in Kansas City than there are TV meteorologists in the country. There are more doctors in Kansas City alone than there are TV meteorologists. I mean, if you go from Market 1 to 210, is it? Maybe 3 stations, 4 stations that have news. So that's what, about 800 outlets, maybe an average of 2.5 people per shop. That's what, 1,500, maybe 2,000 jobs if we're being generous with all the cable. And for me to be able to not only start as young as I did, but to continue to, as you say, be at one shop for such a long time, I'm very fortunate. I don't forget that, and I would like to make sure that those young folks don't fall into the same traps that I did and some of the same bad habits when it comes to trying to perform and do a decent weathercast. I shouldn't say perform, but when you're trying to actually broadcast, because that's one of the things I say, don't act, just be you, So it's been very rewarding to me to see them grow and go from ums and stutters all the way to being smooth. I'd say the biggest market would be New York City. That would be John Elliott, who's on WCBS. Actually, in your backyard, and I don't know if you were at the award ceremony this past weekend, but Matt Laubaum from Tupelo, Mississippi is one of mine. Awesome. Who just walked away with, I guess, an award for the coverage. Mike Nico, who's out at KGO in San Francisco, to try to name them all, there are about 42 who are now gainfully employed in the industry. And if you would name a city, I could probably mention somebody who's nearby. Our panel's in what cities now? Maybe there is some synergy there.
Aubrey is in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and Dr. John is up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and Kevin is in Wichita Falls, Texas, the ones on the show tonight.
Gotcha. And as soon as I say that, all 3, strike 3, I'm out. Don't have anybody in those markets. But it is cool, and it's just because there are enough people who want to see you fail. And there are enough people who are jealous for the wrong reasons, and I'm sure you know that, James. And so you got to develop a thick skin, and I want them to know that within the folks who've interned under me, that there's at least 40 people who have their back, who understand what you're going through, so that if you do have a problem or you don't know how to do something on WSI, or, hey, let me run this idea by you before I run it up to my news director, there's a safe haven there. and that's been kind of cool to see it just flourish. Way back when, and it probably was, as you're saying, the liquor cabinet that Bill was in. Back in the year 2000, I said to my proteges, if you can get to the city that I will host a reunion, and you can get you and your sig other, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, to the city, I'll pay for the block of rooms, and I'll pay for all meals. I don't know, was I in a drunken stupor when I promised this? But the first year I did it at Lake Tahoe, and it was about 14 that showed up. The last year I did it before the economy tanked was in Vegas, and including sig others, it was about 54.
Wow.
But now there are enough of them who are making money who are saying, no, we'll pay our own way, we'll pay our kids' way, we'll pay our family way. But the first year I did it, it was so cool because I was nervous because a lot of these folks had never met each other. And we did a tape critique. Again, because some guys have been doing it 8 years, some guys are just starting out 10 months into it. And I didn't know how it was going to go, and I thought I would have to really shepherd the critique session. But by the first 5 minutes, veterans were talking to the youngsters in a nice, constructive way. The youngsters were asking questions of the veterans in a non-confrontational manner. They were swapping emails and phones. I could have left and gone to my hotel room, and to this date, these guys are still keeping in touch. They call themselves the Flock.
So a lot of young people listen to this show, maybe those that are seniors in high school, maybe those that are freshmen in college that really, really in their heart want to do this. What's your advice to a young person that's just getting into this?
Okay, first of all, make sure that you know that you have a decent support system so that people who know you outside of television and know that you can't take it personally. You know, people, I don't like Brian Busby. You ever meet him? No, I just don't like him. What they mean is my style is not what they're accustomed to or what they prefer. But you can't take it personally. I do have my therapist on speed dial. But other than that...
Yeah, give me that number after the show, please.
Yeah,
show title.
Yeah.
It is... the best advice to tell them is take all the math they can early, you know, take all the calculus and all the physics in high school they can. But if they're going to go into broadcast meteorology, start taking as much writing, get on the newspaper, if there is such a thing anymore for high school or yearbooks, start writing as much as you can. If you can start taking Java, some of the other internet things, because, you know, there are these MMJs, multimedia journalists, and those are some of the entry-level positions where they want you to report 3 days a week and do the weekend weather on the mornings. And so the more versatile you are, the better. And the more that you understand that, yeah, time management is going to be your enemy or your friend, depending on how you approach it, that's the other thing I would give them. And also try to network. And I say this every time I do a commencement speech. It's not what you know, it's who you know. We always hear that, right? And before the teachers get out and tackle me away from the microphone, I tell them, what you know will get you the interview. Who you know may get you the interview, but what you know will get you the job. So you need both. You need to do that networking so that maybe somebody can open the door for you, but it's on you to sell yourself.
And what's your prospect for jobs in this science in the next 10, 20 years? Any growth at all? Shrinking? What do you see?
You know, I think that there are going to be enough of us who are going to hang up our spurs eventually, so that's going to help to a certain extent. I think research is always going to be big, you know, and I think for a while there was no research, or seemed to be a lull in the glut, but now I think there are so many things that people want to know about what causes the hail to form, what causes a thunderstorm to be a right mover, what causes a tornado to form, what causes a thunderstorm to be so electric right before. All these questions need answers, and I think now there seems to be more of a resurgence of people who want to go the research route as opposed to strictly broadcast meteorology. For those who are still wanting to go into broadcast meteorology, I think I don't know if it's going to increase. I think it's probably going to stay at a plateau or decrease. Because eventually, you know, this is a business like any other. And as we all know, if there are 4 news outlets in a market like Kansas City, eventually a board of directors in a distant land in New York City sitting around a boardroom are going to say, you know, it's probably cheaper for us to get a syndicated show off the shelf than it is to keep reevaluating equipment and keeping up with 401ks. So I don't know, maybe a game of musical chairs, James, where whoever is not on top or at least a contender in the ratings, their corporate office or their parent company may say, okay, sorry guys. And we've seen that happen in markets even today. So I don't know if there's going to be much expansion in that regard. I think it may plateau or decline a little bit.
Let's change direction and talk about the market itself. It's severe weather coverage. How do you handle severe thunderstorms, tornadoes at your station?
If it's a tornado, we're on. If it's life-threatening, we are on, and we will stay on until the warning is over. And, a lot of times we'll have to couch it by saying, although there is no official warning out for X county adjacent to the county that's under it, I think that it's going to continue to move into that county, and sure enough, another 15 minutes you're on the air, another half hour you're on the air. There are times that in your heart of hearts that probably it's done its life cycle and it's not going to drop again, but the warning still goes for another 10 minutes or so. Those are judgment calls where we can get off if we feel we need to. But I'm blessed to have a helicopter pilot, and he is amazing, and he can talk ad nauseum. And honestly, as you know, it's kind of nice to be able to put eyeballs on it in addition to seeing the signature on radar. So I try to use one to verify the other. The last couple of weeks we've had, as you know, just rain. I think there are only 3 or 4 days in the month of May that did not have rain, and we started off June in that way. And the word fan comes from the word fanatic, and ABC has the NBA playoffs. And although you know where I'm going. Oh yeah, baby.
This is not going to have a happy ending, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah. And although we don't have an NBA team in Kansas City, there seems to be interest. And I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, so LeBron James, hey, go Cavs, love it. But I didn't break into the program, and no matter how you get into it by covering a network break and showing the first 15 minutes of a Tide or 15 seconds of a Tide commercial, they still swear up and down they're missing something on the court. And get off the air, and then, the ticker, why do you have the ticker on? The ticker's enough. We know it's raining outside. It was funny, one of the sports radio shows had a trivia question. They said, who's made the most appearances in an NBA playoff game? Wrong. Brian Busby, because he was on every friggin' minute. And I only did a cut-in before the game, and I did one at halftime. And I covered one break in the first quarter and one break in the third quarter because of a flash flood warning. And that's all I did. And that now constitutes, hogging the airwaves. One email that said that I guess my mother didn't give me enough attention when I was young.
Now those NBA guys are brutal. But Brian, were you working that Christmas Day? We had some severe weather a couple of years ago. We did a thing with an NBA game. This wasn't the finals. This was like December 25th. Most people are with their families, but we had an NBA game on. We had some tornadoes, and one of the hate mailers that day said I should have been aborted with a coat hanger. Oh, those guys are brutal, man. These NBA guys are tough, man. But seriously though, how do you handle the trolls and the haters and the know-it-alls? What's your theory on handling these guys?
My theory is ignore them, because if they want a fight, I think they want the attention more. They claim that we want the attention. There's certain arguments that you're just not going to win, and if they're going to be rude at the first place. And that's the other thing, James. It took a while for me to understand that probably the folks who are hating are people who don't choose you as their first choice for weather. Imagine, there you are sitting on the couch. You're ready to watch Scandal. You got the popcorn with your honey. You flip on the TV, and the guy you consciously make an effort not to watch is forcing you to sample him for 40 minutes. So there, I think, is why you have to take it with a grain of salt. Most people understand, and I used to use this analogy, and I got to think of a new one, and so I opened it up to anybody else who's on the panel. In the old days, before you could turn off your headlights, imagine if James Spann is the master of ceremonies at a banquet, and the band is playing, and the waitstaff comes out, and you're having a good conversation at the table. James gets up there for an unscheduled program interruption to make the announcement that AYJ 157 left their lights on. If it's your car, you expect that interruption in the program to be made. and you can sit through it if it's not. And I don't know why people can't seem to do that same logic when it comes to severe weather coverage.
Brian, I got to tell you a story because this I know exactly what you're saying.
Go.
And by the way, I just play a meteorologist on television. I'm not like the rest of these guys who truly are broadcast meteorologists. But several years ago, I was working a noon shift, I think it was, and I was forecasting isolated thunderstorms. And they were developing on the high terrain. And the real forecast challenge was, would they move off the high terrain?
Okay.
I didn't think they would, so I just kept the forecast as isolated thunderstorms, most of the viewing area going to be dry.
Right.
Well, guess what? One of those storms moved off and moved over a guy's house where he had hired a painter to repaint his house. And the painter sent me the bill for the paint, saying that I ruined his job.
Please.
Yes.
See, I don't know how we can manage expectation. Part of the reason, I mean, I don't think the science is ever going to get to the point where we're going to be able to say with any sort of certainty that this address will have a random rogue thunderstorm from this hour to that hour. We use our intermittent windshield wipers for maybe 5 seconds and nobody else gets wet. You can't anticipate every one of those small anomalies.
Right.
And here's it's funny. My proteges call me Mr. Analogy. This is one, where have you ever met anybody who's had a perfect Final Four bracket in college basketball? Because what we do is we base our prediction on what has happened climatologically in the past. So as you fill out that bracket with Gonzaga and KU, you base it on what they did in the season. But that's why sometimes brackets break up and blow up because of upsets. Same thing with our forecast. Sometimes some anomaly, something you cannot anticipate. Like when you go to make out that Final Four bracket, you can't anticipate your star player getting injured. You can't anticipate a referee making a stupid call. You can't anticipate the crowd getting into the head of the other team. When you commit it to paper, no matter how well versed you are as an expert in college basketball. And if you understand that there are a lot of variables involved in that kind of prediction, why don't you give us the same sort of credit?
Hey, and speaking of weather forecasting, Brian, what are some of the events that you recall with vivid clarity in your 30 years there at Channel 9?
Well, I would say the tornado outbreak May 4, 2003, when it was a PDS. I mean, it was a particularly dangerous situation. That's the tornado that actually started near the KCK Speedway, went through the north part of Kansas City, lifted up at the Baptist College named William Jewell.
I remember that, yeah.
You remember that?
Yes.
And, I mean, I think it was something like 92 over 75. It was just ridiculous. And, I mean, it was just primed. That comes to mind. There was an ice storm the next year that went close to late January into early February near Groundhog Day. And the stuff was training all the way from the Texas Panhandle, and it just looked like it was going to continue, since it was negatively tilt, all this moisture was going to keep riding up, and we were never, ever going to get below or get above 32 degrees. And I think power was out for about 6 or 7 days straight. That one rings a bell. July 9th and 10th of 1993, massive flooding. Funny story about that. This is before networks are 24 hours because, the transmitters need to cool down. There's no reason to keep the manpower there. So networks would go dark after a certain amount of time. Well, on this one night, we had derechos and training, or not derecho, I'm sorry, it's just all training, but I think it did end up all the way to Indiana. And this was after we signed off the air. And so I told the engineer to put us back on the air, but because there was no log, we had to go to that dusty, moldy shelf of filler programming. And so, like the Best of Threes Company and great shows like that. Wow. And so every time that there was a commercial break, I had to do a cut-in or an informational cut-in so that he could fast forward the tape to the next segment. So I was doing weather updates every 8 minutes or so. And one of our photojournalists came back with water rescues off the top of a couple of the Mexican restaurants down off Southwest Boulevard, if anybody's familiar with Kansas City. So these people were working the kitchen shift and had to be rescued off the pinnacle of all these rooftops in rowboats. So the whole street was under like 20 feet of water. And so the photojournalist is back there, and I've got my lav mic on my tie, and I'm trying to go back and forth as I'm debriefing him. We're playing it raw, and I'm talking about this very serious flooding situation, and we'll have more details after this. We go to commercial break. Go back to the program. I start laughing uncontrollably, and the engineer gets in my ear and says, "Brian, why are you laughing?" He says, "Do you see the program that you've put on TV that I'm breaking in? It was the Undersea Adventures of Jacques Cousteau."
Nice choice.
Really?
Yeah.
I like it.
So out the corner of my eye, I see this undersea footage of like the flooding on Southwest Boulevard, and then I think I'm still on the air, and it's actually the program.
Wow.
So those come to mind. Also, there was some nasty flooding where this was after we had a lot of melt-off upstream, and we had the confluence of the Kansas and the Missouri River. And farther downstream in a city of Hardin, Missouri, and you may remember this on the national feeds, a couple of cemeteries were washed away, and so all these caskets floated down the Missouri River all the way to St. Louis.
Goodness. Wow.
Oh, yeah. So those are the ones that come to mind for sure.
What are your biggest forecast challenges in that market, year in and year out? What's the hardest thing to forecast?
Hardest thing to forecast for us, I would say, is ice storms, because we usually get them going into spring, so it's not usually your typical November, December. We get them like February, March, and when you think, okay, we've turned the corner, no, we haven't. So that's the tough one. I would say MCSs are pretty well behaved. They start over the plains, they get going. By the time they get to us, they lose a lot of their aggression, so it's just a rain event, so that's not too bad. But I always say that Kansas City is much more of a flash flood town than it will be a tornado town. And so I can remember and recount more flooding events than I can tornado events. So I'm actually more rusty when it comes to predicting those outbreaks. Sometimes you look at the data and kind of go, yeah, that was obvious. And sometimes, as you know, a rogue will come up and there's no watch, there's no warning except for as it's happening. It's like, oh, well, where'd that come from? I would say the day-to-day would be definitely ice storms, definitely the winter, because the city has grown up so much, and the difficulty of having the snow stick, especially in the urban core, makes it more challenging. So you may predict 5 inches and only 2 stick, but you look at the liquid equivalent and you would have verified. So that's always tough. And again, managing expectations, because people want you to be right every time. As opposed to, I wish I have a job where I could be wrong half the time and still keep it.
Oh yeah. How many bozos say that to us every day? So how is your working relationship, Brian, with the National Weather Service there?
Love them. Believe it or not, it's one of those sort of just mutual respects. And although I was talking that at the outset when I was at St. Louis U, a lot of the meteorology majors didn't want the broadcasting, they want the Weather Service instead. There's such a great crew out there at Pleasant Hill where we exchange information, we swap ideas, they take criticism well. They understand that, if you're going to drop a watch, why don't you let us know right before the 10 o'clock news as opposed to knowing 5 after?
Yeah.
Or if you know that you're going to go for, at one time, this office would put out warnings for 45 minutes to an hour for a tornado warning. And it's like, why don't you do short fuse, please? Maybe make it a smaller area, and if we have to continue, we have to continue. But to go out there and try to tap dance, as you know, for an hour with not much new information coming in is kind of difficult, and also plays right into the boy who cries wolf syndrome, because nothing happened the last time we had a tornado warning. Why should I listen this time? And the false alarm rate, I think we all know, just for everybody to protect themselves from being sued or taken off guard, is I think we err sometimes too much on the side of caution. But this office is pretty good. They're great, and they're great folks. So
I have to ask you.
Hey, go ahead,
I'm
John.
sorry.
Thanks. Do you have any experience with viewers calling in about the contrails and mentioning that it's the government's attempt to modulate climate?
Well, I think that Mom and I, when we look up there and we see them going crisscross, yes, I get it all the time. I get it all the time. And no matter what you say and no matter how you couch it, they don't believe it. And I beg your pardon? One more time, please?
If you didn't hear it, it said
Chemtrails, nice.
Yeah.
Isn't she a correspondent for CNN Chemtrails?
Exactly. So here, I love to ask this question: a day in the life of Brian Busby. When do you get up? What do you do all day? When do you go to bed? When do you sleep?
I try to get up by 8 o'clock, work out in the home gym before I go and start my day, and try to see stuff by mid-morning, so as soon as I step out the house, I'm at least somewhat versed on what's going on. Run the errands first portion of the day, go into the office about 2:30 in the afternoon, brief the afternoon producers, start drawing the graphics, do the news briefs at 3 o'clock, feed our radio partners at 3:30, put in the captioning at 3:45, do a cut-in during or right before Ellen starts at 3:50, go back to trying to draw the graphics, go on at 4:15, do a live hits with radio. 4:30 to 5 o'clock is pretty much in the Weather Center doing the graphics as best you can and answering the phone and emails and trying to get out a tweet or something like that as well. Do the 5 o'clock show. At 5:30, go into a post-mortem. How do we do? What do we do right? What do we do wrong? How can we improve? Go back at 5:45, do a radio cut-in. 6 o'clock to 6:30 is the 6 o'clock show. At 6:30, feed the newspaper. Talk to the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock producer before going out to dinner. Go out to dinner at 7. Come back at 8 at the latest because we have a 9 o'clock on our sister station. See if the evening run's got anything, if the Her or any of the other rapid models have anything popping up that you need to know about. Try to draw some other graphics. Put in new closed captioning. Do the 9 o'clock, go into postmortem of 9. Talk to the 10 o'clock producer, do the 10 o'clock. Breathe. Then answer emails, voicemails, set up the schedule for the weather team tomorrow, send out the note for the morning producers, and try to get home. Can't unwind until as soon as I get home. I'm still pretty much adrenaline filled, so maybe if I'm lucky at 1:30 to get to bed to only start it over again.
Wow. Now you mentioned newspapers, so you're doing something for print?
Well, yeah, that's next to the Pony Express. That's the best way to get information. Yeah, we do a community newspaper. Yes, we do. Yes, and that's part of the deal. And as you know, it's a handshake. And our bosses say, "Oh, that's just one more thing." Yeah, but that was 7 ago. That was one more thing.
Yeah. Now, are you like doing graphics for this, or what do you actually do for the newspaper?
You do the forecast, and you have a spreadsheet, and you say use icon 15 for this one, use icon 3. So it's not that labor intensive, but it is still a forecast. It is still generated for a specific area because it is a local, one of those suburban newspapers. So we do try to tailor it for just that suburb and that viewership. And that gets tricky, especially in the wintertime. You know, you do your broad brush bands, and all of a sudden you think, okay, now will we see anything heavier within this band that could affect the viewership or the readership of that newspaper? Yeah.
Now, the other thing you said, Brian, that piqued my interest is closed captioning. I don't do that. I don't know. I know we have to do it. I understand during tornado warnings and all these things, but I don't do anything. I don't know what they do for closed. I have no idea if you watch me on television what the closed captioning says. What do you do for that?
You just try to do a synopsis. It's not going to be a word for word since we ad-lib everything, but at least for that Ellen cut-in, since we don't order live captioning, we do have live captioning for the newscast, so that there is actually
we do that for severe weather and all that stuff too.
Right, and for severe weather we have to. But I don't know, maybe my boss is punishing me and I don't know, but I do have to actually put something in there for the Ellen 45 seconds I'm on and just give a general synopsis of what's happening.
Kevin and Aubrey, do you guys do closed captioning like that?
Yeah, I have a question. What runs in your prompter when you're on air during your shows?
It'll be that 45-second blurb, but I flip it over so I see myself, so I don't see the words running by.
Okay, see, I don't have that luxury that I had 5 years ago. I can't flip it over to see myself. Apparently, they would have to run across the hall to flip a button.
Oh my God, that's just ludicrous.
So I can't see myself. I have a monitor right above. Now it used to sit about 7 or 8 inches above the camera, but we had them lower it to where it sits right above the camera, but still it's above the camera.
Okay.
Wait. So you're saying when you're on the air, Aubrey, you have to look at teleprompter stuff?
I try to just focus on the lens, but
wow, my head would explode.
I have myself on screen in my peripheral vision that I'm trying not to look at, but yet I need to know where I am in the screen when I'm looking straight ahead.
Yeah, that's tough.
So, yeah. But James, what do you put in the? I mean, how do they do your forecast? I mean, what goes on the website?
Well, what they do, they extract the material that I write for the weather blog.
Okay.
AlabamaWX.com. They go in there and take that.
As in you have people.
Right. They take that, people in the news department, and they put that in the. So when I'm up there doing the weather, that is what's rolling in the closed captioning, I think, or they might do it live, but I know that they extract that every day for some reason for closed captioning. I guess it's kind of like what Brian's doing, except I wrote it for a blog. They just take it off of there. But I'm like Brian. But when I'm on television, I see myself in the I'm looking at myself so I can see what's back there. I would not be good with a teleprompter showing up. It would be horrible.
I mean, I don't pay attention to the teleprompter. I kind of forget it's there. I focus on the lens and to where to look, and then try to slightly look above it so I can position myself, but without looking above it, because if I look, then you can tell that I'm looking up. So it's but it's tough. Just, I mean, it's over time. You get used to it. It's it happens. But what we do is we write the forecast in iNews, and then that's what goes on the website, and then that's what goes in the rundown for closed captioning.
James, I hope nobody plays a bad trick on you. Like, what braces is James wearing? Look at these suspenders. That is absolutely amazing.
Now, speaking of that, here's my. I'm watching the clock. We got to do some recorded stuff here. But Brian, if we had a Brian Busby gag reel, a blooper reel, what would be the top segment there?
I will tell you without question. If you go on YouTube and you do a search, Busby Groundhog Day, 1995. Have you seen it, James?
No, but
okay.
I will run after this show's over.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure people will do that. Here's the background. Brian Bracco, who was mentioned a while back, who's now the general manager at the NBC station across town, he was my news director before he went corporate. And he just thought I had an infectious laugh, and he loved my smile and personality, blah, blah, blah. So on Groundhog Day, he would like to just have fun with me. So the first year on Groundhog Day, without me knowing it, they actually superimposed in chroma key a cutout, a JPEG of a groundhog. And they lifted it from the bottom of the screen from negative infinity. It would come up and it was right next to me, and it just took me by surprise. And I could not get through the weathercast because this thing just took me by surprise. Okay, so the second year they did it, they made him bigger. So if he were there, he'd be about 6'2". So this 6'2" groundhog was next to me. Okay, that was the next year. The third year, they have him come up, and by this year I'm going, okay, they're going to do something. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to do something. So the third year, they have the electronic groundhog, and they superimpose it next to me, and it goes back and forth like a shooting gallery, but they do it in such a way that they make it look like it goes around me, which I thought took very, very careful planning. Because what they would do is, as it passed in front of me to the left, they'd key it in front of me, but then you have to push the button so it would key behind me as it goes to the right. And so that way it looks like it's going around me in circles. And I said, now, these people have way too much free time on their hands.
Wow.
Here's the year I'm getting at, 95. The chroma key in the old set had a wall in the back and 2 walls on either side, so it was like the weather alley. And this was the old scoops that were very bright. And out of my, I'm still like on automatic pilot, as we all know, James, and everybody does weather. There's certain things you can just do it rote, no worries, you're fine. But out the corner of my eye, while I'm still talking to the audience, I see this fuzzy 5'4" thing heading toward me in this alley with no escape. And I just saw prior to this, if you saw on Fox, I forget what show it was, showing bloopers, it was a Russian commentator with a circus bear on set with her with a muzzle, but the circus bear just wigs out on her for no particular reason and starts, swatting at her. So out of my weird thinking of trying to multitask and talk to my audience, I see this fuzzy thing out the corner of my eye, and I say, okay, the circus is in town. They've hired a circus bear coming right toward me, and I have no way to get away from it. So I let out a scream. Not a very testosterone-filled scream. This scream sounds like the Vienna choir boy scream. So it's like soprano. And then as I see this lady emerge out of the shadow, it's a lady dressed up in a groundhog costume about 5'4".
Wow.
It is hilarious.
I'm just watching it right now. It is
really?
really funny. Oh yeah,
that is
really
great.
Funny.
That's got to be somebody's pick of the week here.
Yeah, let me see if I can share it with you.
Go for it. Go for
it. And again, for those that are listening on the audio side, we'll put a link up on the website on weatherbrains.com.
It's already there, James.
Okay. See, Brian is a step ahead.
Can you see it? All right, here we go.
Yeah, let me pull you up here. There we go.
That's great.
And like those extra 2 inches with me going back to the wall is going to make that much difference between life or death,
One more time.
Well, you got to do something. I mean,
Well, I heard somewhere you're supposed to make yourself look bigger to a bear. That's what I was trying to do.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that would be on the lead. That's got to be on the reel.
That's classic.
All right, we're here at 30 after the hour. We got to take a quick break here for a couple of recorded segments. We've got Professor Peters. We have the astronomy report from Tony Rice. We'll come back with a weather roundup. We'll do picks of the week, the email inbox, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
Radar is an important tool that meteorologists have been using since the 1950s. A radar emits a pulse of energy that travels away from the radar. If that pulse strikes a target, such as raindrops or bugs or birds, a small amount of energy is returned or reflected to the radar, hence the term reflectivity used to describe the radar image. The ability to detect the shift in the phase of the radar pulse makes a radar special. It makes it a Doppler radar. The phase of the returning signal typically changes based upon the motion of the raindrops. This effect was named for the Austrian physicist Christian Doppler, who discovered it. You have probably experienced the Doppler effect as a train goes by blowing its horn. The change in sound is due to the movement of the source of the sound toward or away from you. Broadcast radars operate in the C-band around 4 to 8 gigahertz with a wavelength of about 5 centimeters. National Weather Service radars operate in the S-band at 2 to 4 gigahertz with a wavelength of 10 centimeters. Both do a good job of detecting rain, but the S-band offers better characteristics for penetrating storms. Radars vary in transmission power, too. The NEXRADs, or the WSR-88Ds used by the National Weather Service, have an average transmitted power of about 450 watts. By comparison, a typical home microwave oven will generate about 1,100 watts of energy. And it's a fascinating aspect of radar that it will do more listening than anything. If you total the time of all pulses transmitted for 1 hour, the radar is actually on for about 7 seconds each hour. The remaining 59 minutes and 53 seconds are spent listening for any return signals. Well, that's WeatherBrains 101 for this edition. If you have a question about weather terms, you can send them to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
After more than 9 years of travel, the New Horizons mission is nearing Pluto. The Grand Piano-sized spacecraft will make its closest encounter with Pluto and its moons at about 31,000 miles per hour. This is going to happen in just over a month, Tuesday, July 14th, at 11:50 a.m. or 8:50 a.m. Eastern.
I thought it was going to be, okay.
I spent this past Saturday with the mission team at the Applied Physics Laboratory near Baltimore, Maryland. They're currently analyzing images daily from the spacecraft, looking for any obstacles in its path in this previously uncharted part of our solar system. As Pluto gets bigger and bigger in these images, it's got the mission team and a lot of other people wondering, what is it like on the surface of this once planet? Well, so far we know that Pluto has an atmosphere. It's rich in molecular nitrogen. This is similar to Saturn's largest moon, Titan, or Neptune's largest moon, Triton, as well as our atmosphere right here on Earth. Well, that's where the similarities end. Pluto's atmosphere is extremely thin. Pressure is estimated at less than 100 microbars, or about 100 millionths that of the surface pressures here on Earth. Temperatures range from -400 to -360 degrees Fahrenheit. New Horizons will tell us a lot more about that atmosphere as it returns flyby data over the next several months. It's a long way out there, but the sun still does shine in Pluto's skies. You can get a sense of how bright things are by going out on a clear day at Pluto time. Pluto time is when the sun is 1.5 degrees below the horizon, which works out to be about 6 minutes before sunrise, or about 6 minutes after sunset. This will approximate how bright the surface of Pluto is at solar noon, its brightest time. You can visit solarsystem.nasa.gov/Pluto time to find out when the next Pluto time is for your location. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
So we just got a text from our 17-year-old. Says they are playing WeatherBrains in the Dairy Queen right now. So you know we've hit a milestone when you're live in the Dairy Queen.
That's it. We can quit.
That's it. We're done. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. He says you've reached a milestone. So shout out to all of our friends watching at the Dairy Queen on U.S. Highway 280 in northern Shelby County, Alabama. That's too weird. All right. So Weather Roundup. Dr. John Scala, I think you get the trophy. You and Aubrey get the trophy for the wildest weather today with those big storms up there.
It was fascinating to watch this development. I'm going to share with you the national view here, North America. Let's put this up. This is a 12-hour IR satellite loop, and you can see. I'm going to point to southeastern Pennsylvania and south central Pennsylvania, which is where I am. All the storms went around us initially, and then they finally worked their way in. We were capped, and when that cap finally went, then the stuff worked its way in. But if you look off towards the west, you can see where the upper trough is, now moving across Lake Michigan and then into Michigan proper. So we've still got some business to deal with tonight as that trough approaches. Right, Aubrey?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. It was interesting to see the development, pretty much right on time. The discrete cells ahead of that line, there were only a couple of them, but boy, did they pack a punch. And that's where our main activity came from, were those couple of cells out ahead of that main line that you see along the coast right now.
Yeah, it's all merged, so it transitioned from those discrete cells and then into a quasi-linear form of arrangement. The front is still well off towards the west, right? And then you see all this mesoscale development across Ohio and Indiana. That's the upper lobe, so we still got a lot of business to work through here.
Right before the end of the 5 o'clock show tonight, I pulled up and I tweeted the picture of this. You could see this massive line of storms. It was from just south of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, to about Winchester, Virginia, and it was just this huge line, and a couple of them were severe, but it was just an interesting line to really look at and to see those clouds. I was watching it from our tower cams, and just the narrowness of the clouds was pretty incredible to look at.
It is fascinating. And let's look back over towards Baja, right? That's what's left of Hurricane Blanca, right? Yep. This was a pretty decent hurricane. It was 140 mile per hour winds. Is this going to bring you rain to Southern California?
Yeah, I do weather on radio in Phoenix, and we've hit showers pretty hard tonight, tomorrow, and maybe into Wednesday. So Arizona, parts of Southern California, and actually some of the high-level moisture from that thing got entrained in this trough over the east. If you look real carefully, there's a connection there. So so many times I've seen these tropical systems in the eastern Pacific, and you just don't think anything of them. But if they do what this one's doing, it could affect a lot of people in the continental United States. You don't even think about that. I was in a flash flood once in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from a former hurricane called Tico. That was a terrific storm. Came up.
We were hoping for some of that action here before what happened in May. But in fact, I had a good drought piece of information come by my desk today. Is from the Texas Water Development Board. They look at the U.S. Drought Monitor, but if you look a year ago. And the drought monitor, has 5 categories, but only D1, 2, 3, and 4 are considered drought. Abnormally dry is the lowest category. So there's 4 categories, but a year ago, across the state of Texas, 68% of the state was at some level of drought, either moderate, severe, extreme, or exceptional. And they put it out today, and it's now 1%. It's a tiny little patch in the northwestern part of the Panhandle, and that's the only spot in Texas that has some level of drought right now. Of course, horrific continues in the west, but and it was in such a short period of time. We really got out of that fast.
We need a drought buster song like Ghostbuster.
Yes, that would be good.
Drought buster.
There you go.
Hey,
Brian,
Kevin, I'm showing the drought monitor right now. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's stunning.
Yeah, okay. Now take a look at, this is May. This is the month of May. We're looking at the precipitation anomaly for the month of May.
Wow.
Look at the green here.
Yep, this is stunning. Really was amazing.
Kevin is right in the middle of that too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have to mention, I kind of heard bits and pieces of y'all visiting with Brian, and I was pretty impressed with the idea that he gets to meet people, or people get to meet with him in Lake Tahoe, which kind of puts a damper on my story about meeting him in the bathroom at the White House.
It's all perspective. It's all perspective.
So, Brian, what's happening weather-wise in Kansas City? We're just doing a little roundup what's happening around the country, so what's going on there?
Well, put that map back up there, and you'll see in the center what John was talking about is that in the month of May, Kansas City only had 4 days the entire month of May with no measurable precipitation.
Wow.
And the month of June is starting off pretty much in the same course, in that, I think we had over 10 inches of rain in the month of May in Kansas City. And thus far in June, we're well on pace to have what we normally have during the month of June. And it's only, less than a week, almost a week now, since today is the 8th. And it's just been crazy, and it's been nuts. And we've had more flood warnings than anything else, and not just flash flood warnings, but flood warnings as well. And it's going to take a while for the Missouri Basin to get back where it should, back in the channel.
I heard an amazing number it was a week or two ago, and I don't know if I believe it. It was on the NBC national news, but they said that there were 23 consecutive days in May where someplace in Texas got 4 inches at least.
Wow.
Wow.
Again, it was the network. I don't know. Which brings up, can we talk about this thing? I mean,
yes.
I know, you know where I'm going with this, Aubrey?
No, I just love when you go on a tangent.
Oh, this is good. Just stand aside and let him go.
Maybe I should.
Inflammatory.
All right, I probably shouldn't. I'll just sit here quietly. No, it's this thing. I'm sure that Norman had the best of intentions when putting out these numbers of people impacted on the SPC outlooks and whatever else it was. But talk about unintended consequences, where Al Roker and everybody else are going, all you hear now, 47 million people in flash flood zone, 802.3 quintillion people in the threat of severe weather. I mean, can we please stop that? It is such hype and sensationalism, and I'm sure the people, like I said, in Norman just never envisioned, but this is what happens with these national media outlets, and it's really, I just find it kind of embarrassing.
Well, Kevin, it's trickled down to the local, too, in that, WSI will put how many people are affected, and my boss loves it, that we have a tornado watch that 1.8 gazillion people could be under the impact of this, Or the other one, when you have like a flood warning that's only for a small creek, 216. Then the haters come out and say, well, that's only 216 people. It's in the herd.
Yeah.
Really?
I just really feel bad that number, because obviously they didn't intend for it to be used that way, but it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
So what started that? Is this some consultant thing, or what do you think's behind that?
I think it just showed up. I mean, it showed up a year or so ago on the SPC outlooks, And because it was just one of those things they could do, you put highways or counties, and then all of a sudden there were those population centers, and somebody decided to put a number on it. Maybe Rick knows more, but I think they just saw it as a chance to be sensationalistic.
It used to be an option. I remember in the system that we had before Max, it used to be an option with severe thunderstorm warnings or whatever warning that you could go through population, and it used to be an option. So I don't know if it was maybe something that was off of that, but the old weather systems were always able to do that.
I think when they added the new categories, if you look at any day, whatever 1, 2, 3 day outlook, down at the bottom of the map now, they include the area in square miles, and they include the area population. So for tomorrow, there's a marginal risk in 3 different spots across the northern portion of the country, and the population number is 74,123,950 people. Now that includes the Northeast Corridor, so it's New York and Philadelphia and Baltimore, and Boston as well. So, but just but all we hear from Al is 74 million people affected by severe weather tomorrow, and I just find that irresponsible.
And don't forget monster storm.
Right.
That's my favorite.
For naming winter storms, isn't that population criteria?
Oh, I think they do. I think they do use some sort. Yes, I think you're right. Because the year they started that, there was a lot of blowback on that. But one of the things I remember hearing them say, you're right, Aubrey, that they weren't going to name if it was plowing across Montana because it just wasn't big enough for them to bother.
Right.
It didn't affect enough people for them to bother with it. Yeah, that's a good point.
But yet it still could put down 28 inches of snow, and it still could be a monster storm.
That's right.
Monster rain shaft.
Might not affect 7 billion people.
This was the lead. I mean, this was the opening scene on World News Tonight. And by the way, guess who's going to be on our show next? Ginger Z.
Oh, we'll have to ask her about that.
ABC News. And
you know what, though?
What?
Put that picture back up. And I hate to do this for the audio listeners, but we were talking about this here the other day because we had a bunch of shelf cloud pictures come in with the storms that rumbled through in May. And this is a small point, I understand, but that picture clearly is some level of pano picture, right? And especially on a gust front, if you take a big panorama shot, and all the phones will do this now, it makes it look curved, and it makes it look like it's a rotating storm, which is much more threatening. And again, I know it's a small point, but to me, when you put that out there and you go, oh my God, monster storm, but it's this big rotating looking thing, even though it's just a shelf cloud, I think that starts to border on a little bit of credibility issue.
My mother was actually talking to me about this earlier today. She said, what's with everyone flipping out about a couple of storms? She said, I don't get it. She said, they're storms. She said, what's with all the hype about every single storm has to be watched and tracked and analyzed, and she's like, it's a storm.
And the term monster storm, I hate to say it, it just makes me laugh because when I think of monster, I think of like Grover, the monster storm. It's like, really?
Oh, brother. All right. Well, I'm the lead on the news here, so we got to roll on here, and if we're going to roll on, we got to roll on to the most marvelous part of the show. It's the email inbox.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
I was telling my husband that was my segment. Okay, so this email came in from Richard Cook. Sent us a great picture of a beautiful depression off of the coast of Ireland on June the 5th. It brought strong winds and rain to parts of the UK. Thunderstorms associated with this system across southeast England, Belgium, and Holland. So thank you, Richard, for sending in that picture. Also, we got a guest suggestion in from Christopher Weitzel. If I'm pronouncing that, I have such an easy last name. I have a difficult especially if they're German. Was that what I said last week?
I think so, yeah. That was one of the show title suggestions.
First of all, I'm loving your Netcast podcast. Weather is an on-off hobby of mine, and I am really enjoying the insider information. So thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate that. I think Tim Vasquez from the weathergraphics.com and author of, several wonderful weather books, would be a great guest suggestion. So we thank you, Chris. And Bill Murray responded, and said that he was actually about to focus on a bunch of Tim's products as his weekend pick. So Tim Vasquez always puts out some wonderful products. And we got a guest suggestion in from Justin Dill. Justin wants us to talk to Mike Clay of Bay News 9, so thank you for that guest suggestion. We have a listener survey response from Adam Cisco from Meridianville, Alabama. I would love to see the subject of each show added to the title or video description on YouTube. It's impossible to browse shows on YouTube with just the numbers. Thanks.
I think we'll put Brian on that project.
So Brian, Adam, Brian is on that project.
There you go.
Right. It'll take him 20 years, but he'll get to it.
There you go.
Yes. And then let's not forget this, and I apologize for not have been on much the last couple of weeks due to some busyness in the schedule. But this email comes in from Jeff Podletsky. And it is a top 10 list. Since David Letterman's final show was a couple of weeks ago, he has a top 10 list in honor of James Spann. So top 10 things James Spann is highly unlikely to say.
Right.
So we're going to go through these one by one. I am pleased to announce WeatherBrains will now be airing on National Public Radio each week. I'm so glad I installed Windows on my laptop.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Sorry I'm late. I was checking my phone messages here at the station.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I've not answered my phone since 1998.
I was going to say, those go back to like 1874. So.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill Murray, I didn't see the latest update. What's the TourCon for Central Alabama? I wish more television station websites would broadcast their live streams in Flash.
Yes. Oh boy, Flash, please.
If you want to get the latest tornado warning information for Alabama, just subscribe to my Facebook news feed. Oh, get the buzzer ready. The weather has been so intense lately, it's obviously because of climate change.
Yes.
And I just say this one with attitude. This polygon is totally unrespectable.
That's good. I mean, somebody wasted way too much time coming up with it. That was good.
That's great. That was fantastic.
We have a new comedy writer for the show.
I know, that's better than all the bits I've done combined.
All right, we're down to the last two. Number two, Central Alabama is under a tornado watch until 6 a.m. So if a tornado warning siren wakes you up in the middle of the night, get into your car and drive south.
That's not happening. Not happening.
And number one is Diane Sawyer. Welcome to WeatherBrains.
Yes! Yes!
Oh, boy, that's funny stuff. Wow, great.
Thank you, Jeff, for sending those in. That was absolutely hilarious. And if you would like to send us in some information, fun link, listener survey response, go to email at weatherbrains.com. No, don't go to email at weatherbrains. Go to weatherbrains.com, where you can send us an email to email at weatherbrains.com, and then you can find us all on the Facebook and the Twitter and all that fun stuff, all that social media that we love so much that takes up so little of our time.
Yes. All right. So
Jeff,
listen.
Jeff needs to send me a note because we need to hook up. I'll add a little production value, and you come up with the material for the next one.
So I got a note. I'm the lead on the newscast in here. So one of you fine professional broadcasters here has got to take over and do picks of the week. We got storms north of here, so I got to go in the studio. My pick, it's the Hurricane Historical Site. That's just fantastic, and Brian will put a link to it. So somebody take it, please. I got to go.
Got to be you, Aubrey. No, I got to go in a minute, too. Well, I don't even remember
Kevin's got to go.
What was my pick, Brian? I sent it in.
Your pick was the referral-driven web.
The referral-driven web? I don't even remember sending that in. Oh, it was an article. I know what it was. Yeah, okay. It's not weather-related. It's more Terry Heaton. Yeah, Terry Heaton. Yeah. Terry Terry's an amazing guy. He was a news director in Alabama many years ago and a couple of other places, but he's kind of acting as a consultant now. But Terry is a very, very intelligent, forward thinker on the web, and It's what's the name? It's the Pomo blog, stands for postmodern, but thepomoblog.com, and he is a really insightful thinker. We all subscribe to one or two things, and Terry doesn't put stuff out every day. I think nobody's got something to say every day. He only does it every now and then, but when he writes something, it is well worth it, especially for all the broadcasters and the people in the industry. So, but Aubrey, you take over. Oh, but you and Bear take over.
All right. Yeah, I have a bear, so I apologize for the bear. She just got a haircut today. She got her summer due.
Very nice.
Summer haircut. All right. So, Mr. Peters, your pick of the week.
Mr. Peters. Okay. So
Would you like me to say General?
Colonel.
Colonel.
Yeah,
Colonel. That's the show title, General Peters.
Thank you.
I gotta go. Nice to see you, Brian. Take care.
Yeah, right.
Be well.
Back, I think a few months ago, I put a pick of the week to the World Solar Flight that they were planning. Well, the around the world solar flight is underway, so I've got an updated link to the Solar Impulse. So we'll put that on the picks of the week.
All right, and Mr. Busby, do you have a pick of the week, website, fun article for us, picture, anything?
Oh wow! I'm totally flat-footed. I became unprepared for this.
Do you have a blog, Twitter account?
Twitter account will be Brian Busby KMBC, Brian with a Y, so it's the Celtic spelling.
Okay.
Brian Busby on Facebook is like the Brian Busby on Facebook is the fan page there.
So we can follow you.
Yes, you can. And I didn't figure out how to do the Google Plus to put my name at the bottom, so that's why. Not like Brian or you. It looks great.
It took
I
me
still haven't done that either. What's my problem?
John.
What's my problem?
Dr. John.
Well, I have a real appropriate pick of the week. Brian, you're going to love this one. This is an article that appeared in The Vane. Yep. And the article is titled, "Stop Asking Weather People Exactly When It'll Start Raining at Your House." And I got to read you a couple of lines from this. "Forecasts today are accurate to a fault. People expect too much and get angry and disappointed when their friendly local weather person cannot deliver." And there's one other line here I want to read to you. "One of the problems with such accurate forecasts is that people expect too much from them. They expect accuracy that we haven't achieved just yet, and it's both a frustrating and dangerous side effect of advances in meteorology." So there you have it.
Here. Agreed. Yeah. I think
right.
I remember seeing that on somebody's feed. Yeah, I have not read it yet, but now that
You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it.
It's good, but yet somewhat semi-insulting.
How so?
It's basically saying that we can't. It's not saying, but leading you to believe that we can't forecast, instead of explaining in a better tone the challenges with forecasting over your house at that moment.
Right. Okay. Good to know.
And then my pick of the week is from the Daily Telegraph about how Sydney, Australia is going through a very, very cold start to June with temperatures in the upper 30s and lower 40s. And of course, quite the contrast to some of the weather as they are dealing with their winter now. But a nice thought as some of us will be dealing with near 90-degree temperatures this week, right, Dr. John?
Absolutely, you're right, Aubrey. And you know what? That's in stark contrast, to go back to Australia, to what they were experiencing during their summer. It was blazing hot across Australia, and many pointed the finger at the developing El Nino as being responsible for that. But you are right. Looks like we'll build a ridge in the east and say hello to your upper 80s and maybe near 90.
Just in time. My parents are coming up to the Shenandoah Valley to visit, and I'm going to welcome them with some 90-degree temperatures.
Excellent.
All right. Any final thoughts, team?
Oh, Brian, this has been great to have you on the show. I don't think I've met you personally, but of course I know about you, and it's been wonderful to be able to talk to you. And your humility truly is heartwarming. Thanks for being so sincere.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a great forum to be on, and like I say, People wonder, since I've been doing it so long, who my heroes are, and I tell you, Paul Douglas for entrepreneurialism, James Spann for just dedication. I mean, those are two names that come to bear when people ask me who I look up to. So it was kind of fun. And to meet all you guys, it was I didn't know if I could sustain, what's it, an hour and a half?
Oh, sure.
I didn't think I was going to be interesting enough for that, but my gosh, you guys made it so easy, so thank you.
Well, good. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It does.
Colonel Peters, any final thoughts?
Yeah, Colonel Peters. I keep expecting to see a bucket of chicken.
I've got to get me one of those as a prop here. Well, we have a saying that sleep is for sissies, but I have jury duty tomorrow, so I'm going to skip out because the criminals would like me to be well rested.
They would.
Yes.
They want you to pay attention.
Yes.
All right. Well, hopefully weather isn't a factor in one of those issues.
Hope not.
All right, guys. Well, I guess it's just down to you guys and me. So from all of you out there, we thank you for watching WeatherBrains. We broadcast live on Monday nights, 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern Time, as Dr. John and I are in the Eastern Time Zone. And we thank you for watching. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter. You can also log on to weatherbrains.com or send us an email, send us a note, a fun link, or your comments at email@weatherbrains.com. So from all of us here at WeatherBrains, I am, of course, not James Spann. Never played. I have more hair than James Spann. And we thank you and have a great night.
Great, thanks.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. Take care, John.
It was great to have you on.
Nice to meet you. Be well.
You too. So long, Aubrey.
Hey. Wow, people are still here. We're going to beam up here. We're going to go to Periscope. So if you're watching this live by chance, check my Twitter feed here in about 10 minutes after the TV weather segment. We'll launch that for Song of the Night, which is a whole different genre of strangeness. It's songs about rain this week. So Song of the Night coming up shortly. Thank you all for watching WeatherBrains. Loved having Brian on the show. Great show this week. But I got to go back in the studio. We'll see you all next week. And actually, we have a Friday night special. Friday night. We'll tweet that out later. Bye.